right of the map, we have in orange our Zerg player for Team FXO. This is
FXO Lucky.
Good to see that Ken is still here.
Yep, Ken replaced Street Fighter Voice. He's now in here. And starting to the bottom left of the map, we have Lucky's opponent. He's starting for LGIM, the opening player. He is you guy.
LGIM, Ruin.
Ruin. And we've already seen Ruin's skill level. This guy is smart, he's fast, and he plays a style that you might expect. I mean, he's just a good player overall. There's nothing that stands out about his style necessarily. It's just that he's quick. He knows how to turn engagements into his favor. His storms are excellent. We've seen that already for sure.
He was an amazing player when we saw him for the first time in the GSTL preseason against Aximesa. He played very well here. And now we have Lucky apparently going for a hatch first play against his Protoss opponent, which is really interesting.
It's a 4-player map, you know, so nowadays you have to scout all locations, and if your Protoss opponent gets unlucky, he may not be able to see this, but he has seen it, and he has the Forge going down. So we are going to see very defensive play from Lucky here. He's going to have to absolutely make sure that no cannons go down.
Lucky has to be careful now, you're certainly right. He needs to make sure that this probe is not going to place down a pylon. I don't really feel that Ruin is going for it, but there's always the threat.
Look at Raynor in this picture. Zeratul looks a little bit sad.
Yeah, it's not, we know it's not Legacy of the Void just yet.
Yeah, he has to wait a little bit longer.
Zeratul is getting close in this case. Yeah, I can certainly understand.
And with a very careful scouting from Lucky, there's no cannoning going on here. He's got the probe threatening back there, but he doesn't actually place anything. He knows that the drone is following, and this is just not going to work.
Yeah. We have the Nexus being placed down, and Lucky now in this position is getting away with the hatch first. He now has a pretty good economy that he can rely upon.
This is just, it goes to show that a 4-player map can change things so much. Just not knowing where your opponent's going to spawn 100% can really affect you. And everyone's aware of this. He's going double hatch here, by the way. Extremely fast third hatch.
This is a very fast third hatch. It's actually a little bit insane. Usually you see that around 4 minutes, 4:20. But now we have this at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. He really wants to have a good economy and a very good start to this game.
Ruin has his probe in such a clever location. There's a big area in the main base that the creep does not cover, that he's hiding his probe in just on the edge. And this could be a big problem if Lucky wants to hide some sort of tech. The thing is, once he goes in there and he sees no gas, he's going to know the hatchery is up really fast.
This is once again one of those scenarios as a Protoss player where you hide your probe and your initial goal is to just make sure that you get a second scout into the base. But then when you realize, well, this unit is never scouted. You could use it for a forward pylon, and if the Zerg player doesn't see that pylon, suddenly his entire main base is completely exposed. So this is potentially game-breaking.
Yeah, it really is. In this situation, I feel it's just going to be a minor annoyance for Lucky, but it could have been a game-ending, as you said. And he's going to keep that probe in there. If he wants to, he can keep it in there all the way till past Lair Tech to scout for Aspire, for example.
To tell you the truth, I feel that at some point we might just see him. If he is about to finish his warp gate research and the probe is still there, I feel we might have a very, very difficult gateway attack to him for him to hold off.
Yeah, that's very true. He goes and shows the probe now, and he's going to be very aware. No gases, must be a third hatch. Nothing else makes sense. He's going to go and see the first gas down here as well. This is unfortunate for Lucky.
Yeah. I would have really liked him to just go and take a chance here. We've seen this in so many tournaments. When you miss the probe and the probe is in your main base and then there's a pylon, then there's just nothing that you can do anymore. And Lucky, from what we've seen so far, would have never scouted this pylon. But as it is, he uses it for the scout, he gets the scout in, and now it decides to go into the Stargate.
Yeah, most likely going to start some Phoenixes here to put some pressure on. Void Rays in Heart of the Storm are much stronger than they used to be, but we're not going to see those most likely until the mid to late game, if we see them at all.
Yeah, the Air Force or the Air Army in general for Protoss is very strong against Zerg. If you have a lot of Tempests and you have also a few additional High Templars that can use feedback against Vipers and also Storm against Hydralisks, for example, Mutalisks, this is just really strong. You can do a lot with that. And of course, as you mentioned, Void Rays are just so good these days. There's a lot that a Protoss can do, but first of all, he has to go at least up to 3 bases. Pulling that off on 2 is just way too difficult.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just looking at this map, I mean, this is my first time looking at it this much in detail. I've looked at a lot of thumbnails of it, basically, in the past. It looks like the bases are relatively close to each other, so this is going to be a good map for Frost to just slowly push out, take more bases, and build up what has been called the death ball, and I think that's what we're going to see Ruin start to do here. He's cleaning up Overlords first with his Phoenixes.
The Overlord's making sure that there is no scouting going on at this point, so there's really nothing that he can do to get into the base again. But the first thing that Lucky does is get a few Spore Crawlers out.
Yeah. So, you know, it's kind of a weird choice that you have to make. It's not a wrong one, but he chooses to clean the Overlords and try to supply block rather than go for the hidden Phoenixes. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. In this case, he forces the Spore Crawlers early, not going to be able to do much else with his Phoenixes.
I'm very interested to see what Lucky is going to do. We had a lot of Zerg players now going into a Hydra Den, and this is exactly the choice that Lucky is going for too. He starts off with the Hydras, and from the Hydras on, he has a lot of different choices to make. He can go into additional Swarm Hosts, which is not that common anymore. You see a lot more Zerg players trying to go for the Hive Tech then and add a few Vipers to pull Colossi in.
Yeah, usually you don't see Swarm Hosts unless one of the players gets, one of the Zergs gets drastically ahead early on.
Yeah, if you go for like a 2-base timing push, then Swarm Hosts are a little bit more common, but in general, it seems like Hydras and Vipers are the better composition.
Right. Now, the Phoenix is getting a decent amount of scouting information here, and since he's already seen the Hydralisk Den, he's going to start his robotic support bay as soon as that robo is done. And these first 6 Hydras are not really going to be a problem. Ruin can actually continue to run around them, pick off Overlords, and try to grab some drones if he sees the opportunity.
Yeah, and one of the things that you have to always be aware of if you're a Zerg player is that the initial Hydra list, they won't help you too much. If there are a lot of Phoenixes, then you have to be still careful. Keep them close because those Hydra lists, they are so light armored. And this is exactly what I was just talking about.
Wow.
The first 2 are gone, another one is down. Those Queens are able to do some damage. At least one Phoenix bites the dust here, but still a good call here by Ruin.
Yeah, it was excellent control by Ruin. He did end up losing some Phoenixes there in the end, but regardless, he was able to keep the Hydralisk count low. That's what he wants until he gets those Colossi out. And Overlord speed was made very early for Lucky, but the problem is he can't see these pushes out, he can't see these move outs because the Phoenixes are still controlling the map.
He's going into Hive now, exactly what we predicted earlier. Even taking his 4th base, he really wants to get the Vipers. Abduct is just very strong. It was at a point where I was really looking at Abduct and was wondering if it's a little bit too strong against Protoss. It's very difficult for a Protoss player to keep those Colossi at the back of the army. But what you have to do to counter those Vipers is you need to get your Templar archive up. You need a few High Templars, and then with a feedback you can work against Vipers.
Yeah, that's basically the only way. Everything else is just going to get grabbed, and Stalkers are not the answer to try to pick them off. You need those Templar.
The problem with the Stalkers is if you really want to take out the Vipers, you basically have to blink into the Hydra list.
Yeah, and you don't want to ever be there.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when your cooldown is up then and you can't retreat anymore, so that's very difficult. The answer is definitely High Templars, and this is why we are currently seeing the Templar Archive being built. Also, of course, for the upgrades.
Yeah, it's quite critical. Now, I'm curious to see what the next move of Ruin is going to be exactly with the Hive Tech. I mean, the Hive Tech is something that we've seen very commonly with Broodlords in the past, but now Ultralisk and of course getting the Vipers out is more common to see. He's making 14 drones right now. We actually don't have the observing computer today, which is going to be fixed very soon, but I don't know. Has he scouted the 3rd base of the Protoss? He must know at this point. Oh, the Overlord can definitely see that.
Yeah, he definitely has to. And now we have this move out with the Mothership Core, which is always very good for the Protoss player because you can just recall back home to your own main base if you see that this is not going to work out well for you.
Oh, really nice pickoffs here with the drones. Just using that extra Phoenix range that you have in Heart of the Swarm to pick them off. Gets away, kills a few drones, and the Queen doesn't lose a thing.
Yeah. Now those Vipers are joining the game though, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult for the Protoss player. He has to be very careful now. Especially if you think about it. One of the attempts that a lot of Protoss will make is push out with a Mothership Core because they think they are safe and they can TP back, like use that recall. If a Viper on the other hand gets an Abduct on the Mothership Core, suddenly that option is gone and you might lose your entire army if you were too careless.
Yeah, you have to be extremely careful with dealing with that. 4 gateways going down here. Templar Archive as well going up at this moment in time. And the Templar Archive is very critical here. The Colossi, yes, they are damage dealers, but once they're grabbed and they're eliminated, the Hydras and the Roaches will make quick work of anything on the ground. So he has to have some sort of AoE, whether it's Storms, whether it's the Colossi, and in this case, it's going to be both.
Keep in mind that those Vipers are really expensive, especially when it comes to gas. 200 gas for each Viper, and they are very fragile units. So if you get too close to the Stalkers or the High Templars, you are done for. Storm even being researched. Great tool against Hydralisk. And here we go. The first abduct is in. The second one, and immediately the first two are gone.
Oh, and the third Colossus getting grabbed here. He pulls back. Not a very good abduct there. Now he finally gets it. Really nice micro by Ruin, able to save his Colossus for a little bit longer. But this Zerg army is just way too much. Grabs that Colossus. And Ruin looks like he may find himself in ruins very soon. The Roaches running through here, picking off the Zealots.
Double Time Warp has been used, but it doesn't help the Protoss player all too much. 120 supply for him against 200. Lucky is once again maxed out, trying to go in there. And Ruin is just desperately trying to get his Storm out. He needs Storm against this army composition, but there are just so many units for the Zerg streaming across the map, trying to lay waste to this Protoss base.
The Vipers were just way too much for him to handle. He could not get those feedbacks off. The Vipers grab those Colossi and really grab the chances of Ruin taking this game away from him. Storm is done, but it's just a bit too late.
The position was just not good for Ruin. You need to have those High Templars at the front for the feedback. You need to make that happen. If you can't do that, then suddenly we see exactly this happen. The Colossi being abducted into the middle of the Roaches and the Hydras, and then it is nearly over. But we are not there just yet.
Yeah, he hasn't quite finished the game, but he's killing the probes here at the third. He's got Ultralisk on the way. The Ultras on the way here are going to be a big problem because in Heart of the Storm, they're much stronger than they were before against all types of units. They do that flat damage now, and Ruin just really trying to save face at this point. He can't hope to come back in this game.
Yeah, this is looking really bad. We have now Ultralisk just joining the battle. We have more and more upgrades coming out. Once again, an abduct. And this time the Colossus might escape. No, the second abduct, the Vipers, they are just there. And there are no High Templars, there are no feedbacks. The Colossi, they are gone. This is not looking good for Ruin.
It falls over, rolls over dead here. Another abduct, takes the Colossus down. And at this point, you know, Ruin, he just looks a bit silly trying to defend against this. Lucky's flashy pulls aren't even necessary for him to end this game.
Lucky is going in, and then he's like, come over here. Oh, the Hydra dance. We are going for the new Hydra dance animation. Lucky very confident that he can win this game, and it does not look like Ruin has an answer to this composition.
No, he's fighting Hydralisk with probes, and I gotta say that's not a good fight for the probes. Ultras taking things apart, and the Ultralisk doing a dance. GG!